On a cold March day in 1841, a new president stood outside the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Snow drifted through the air. The wind cut across the crowd, but the man giving the speech refused a coat. He refused a hat. Then he began delivering the longest inaugural address in American history. Less than a month later, he would be dead. But the strange ending of the presidency of William Henry Harrison is only the final chapter of a life that stretched from the plantations of Virginia to the dangerous frontier of Ohio and into the early wars that shaped the United States. William Henry Henderson was born in 1773 at Berkeley Plantation along the James River in Virginia. His family was already deeply tied to the founding of the nation. His father, Benjamin Harrison V, had signed the United States Declaration of Independence and later served as governor of Virginia. Growing up, young William lived among wealth, influence, and the powerful political circles of the early republic. Important leaders visited the Harrison home. Conversations about independence, war, and government were part of everyday life. But despite the family's political legacy, Harrison's father had a different plan for his son. William would not be a politician, he would be a doctor. In the late 1780s, Harrison was sent north to study medicine in Philadelphia, one of the intellectual centers of the young United States. Before he could finish his education, tragedy struck. In 1791, his father died. Without the financial support from home, Harrison suddenly found himself unable to continue medical school. He had to make a decision. So instead of becoming a doctor, the young Virginian chose a very different path. He joined the United States Army and headed west towards the American frontier. It was a decision that would change the course of his life forever. In the 1790s, the land that would eventually become Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois was known as the Northwest Territory. To American settlers, it represented opportunity, but to the native nations, it was their homeland. The result was a brutal struggle for control of the region. Harrison served under General Anthony Wayne during the violent Northwest Indian War. The conflict reached its turning point in 1794 at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, fought near present day Toledo. Wayne's forces defeated a powerful native confederacy, opening large parts of Ohio to American settlement. For Harrison, the victory marked the beginning of a long career tied to the western frontier. After leaving the Army, Harrison settled along the Ohio River in a small frontier community of North Bend, Ohio. Life on the frontier was very different from the plantation world he had grown up in. The towns were small, the wilderness was vast. Danger was never very far away, but Harrison adapted quickly. He gained a reputation as a capable leader and rising political figure in the region. By 1799, he had been elected to represent the territory in Congress. Soon afterward, President John Adams appointed him governor of the Indiana Territory. At just 27 years old, Harrison was now responsible for governing a huge stretch of land that would eventually become several Midwestern states. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about American history, the frontier, and hidden stories of Ohio, make sure to follow the page and subscribe. I am working on a full series about the presidents who came from Ohio and the incredible stories behind them. Now let's just get back to William Henry Harrison. As American settlements expanded across the frontier, Tensions with native nations continued to grow. One of the most powerful leaders to emerge during this time was the Shawnee chief Tecumseh. Tecumseh believed native tribes needed to unite into a confederation strong enough to resist American expansion. Together with his brother, known as the Prophet, he built a powerful movement centered around a village called Prophetstown. The growing alliance worried American leaders on the frontier and placed Tecumseh on a collision course with the Governor William Henry Henderson. In 1811, Harrison marched north with nearly 1,000 soldiers toward Prophettown. Before dawn on November 7th, native warriors launched a surprise attack on Harrison's camp. The fighting was chaotic and brutal. Gunfire echoed through the forest as soldiers struggled to hold their lines. By morning, Harrison forces claimed victory and burned Prophetstown down to the ground. The clash became known as the Battle of Tippecanoe. Back east, newspapers turned Harrison into a national hero. They gave him the nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life, Old Tippecanoe. Just 1 year later, the United States entered the War of 1812 against Great Britain. Harrison was appointed a general and given command of American forces in the Northwest. His great victory came in 1813 at the Battle of the Thames, fought in present day Canada. The battle broke the British influence in the region and resulted in the death of Tecumseh. With that victory, Harrison's reputation as a national hero was finally established. Years later, Harrison returned to politics, but by the late 1830s, the Whig Party was looking for someone who could defeat the Democrats in the upcoming election. They turned to Harrison, not because of his speeches or political experience, but because of his legend. The campaign posters portrayed him as a rugged frontiersman living in a log cabin and drinking hard cider. The campaign slogan became famous: Tippecanoe and Taylor too. His running mate was John Taylor. The strategy worked. In 1840, Harrison won the presidency in one of the most energetic elections in American history. On March 4th, 1841, Harrison took the oath of office in Washington, D.C. He wanted to show the country that despite his age, he was still strong, so he stood outside without a coat or a hat. Then he delivered the longest inaugural address ever given by a president, nearly 8,500 words. The speech lasted close to 2 hours. The weather was cold and wet. Within a week, Harrison became seriously ill. Doctors believe he had pneumonia. His condition worsened quickly. On April 4th, 1841, just 31 days after taking office, William Henry Henderson died. It was the shortest presidency in American history, but the death created a no problem. No American president had ever died in office before. Vice President John Taylor insisted he was now the full president, not just a temporary replacement. That decision created a precedent that still defines presidential succession today. William Henry Henderson may hold the record for the shortest presidency in American history, but his story is only the beginning of a much larger one. Because in the 1800s, Ohio became known as the mother of presidents. More presidents would come from Ohio than almost anywhere else in the country. And in the future stories here, we will explore the lives of those Ohio leaders, from generals and war heroes to men who helped shape the modern United States. So if you enjoy forgotten history, frontier stories, and the strange moments that shaped America, make sure to follow the page and subscribe, and join me for the next chapter.